What's up, everybody? Tour dates, I got them. Well, actually, I got one big one. It's coming up October 21st, San Pedro, California, which, of course, is my neighborhood in Los Angeles. I'm going to be at the Grand Annex. I'm producing a comedy series at the Grand Annex in San Pedro, California. The first show is October 21st, and it features myself and Stephanie Blum. Stephanie Blum has been on Nickelodeon, MTV, HBO, you name it. She's phenomenal. She's one of my favorite comics in all of LA. She's one of my favorite comics anywhere, really. And that show featuring her and myself is going to be on October 21st, 8 p.m., San Pedro, California at the Grand Annex. You can get tickets at romplacone.com. Again, that's October 21st, Saturday night, 8 p.m. at the Grand Annex. Stephanie Blum and myself, tickets at romplacone.com. See you there. Episode 001, Beans on Toast. Beans on Toast is a UK-based singer-songwriter and touring musician. His cleverly crafted satirical folk has earned him a worldwide following. Beans' music confronts the problems of the world, from war to climate catastrophe to social injustice and everything in between, and he doesn't sugarcoat. Yet, he maintains his sense of hope, joy, and maybe most importantly, humor. Not to mention, he's certainly got his share of love songs, and they're great. I discovered Beans online some time ago. A few years later, my wife and I were on vacation, and we were passing through Manchester. We stopped by the legendary Ritz just to see it, maybe snap a few photos, but since we were there, figured we may as well check the marquee and see who was playing that night. To my very pleasant surprise, Beans on Toast was part of that night's lineup. We immediately grabbed tickets. Beans' show was amazing, and afterwards I caught him standing in the back having a beer. I told him I was a fan from Los Angeles and I'd love to have him on my podcast. He agreed and said to get in touch. We finally made it happen. To all Los Angeles listeners, Beans will be playing LA on September 26th, and you can get tickets for that and any of his other tour dates at beansontoastmusic.com. Again, that's beansontoastmusic.com. Beans is a humble guy, and like many musicians, he likes to let his music do the talking for him and isn't one to get on a soapbox during an interview. I love chatting with him. He's seriously one of my favorite singer-songwriters out there today and the perfect first episode for this series. Please welcome, as the debut guest of 1000, Beans on Toast. So, Beans, thanks so much for doing this. I'm so excited to talk to you. I've been a fan for many years. And we met briefly in Manchester, but I kind of doubt you remember it because I'm sure you met a ton of people that night. But
what night was it? I mean, I've been to Manchester a ton of times as well, but we could probably get to the bottom of it.
So it was in 2018. And I was just in Manchester on holiday with my now wife. I actually proposed on that vacation in Edinburgh, so she was my girlfriend at the time. Nice. But yeah, we walked by the Ritz because that's the Ritz, and I looked on at the bill that night, and I saw you, and I was like, Beans on Toast. I listened to that guy because I'd already known about your music. And it turns out I guess the agency you're with was doing a showcase that night. So it was you and it was
Manchester Folk Festival. Yeah. And Will Varley. Yeah. Incredible night. Yeah.
It was a fantastic lineup. So I looked at that and my now wife goes, well, I guess we know what we're doing tonight. And I was like, awesome. So we get tickets. My first time seeing a show at the Ritz and caught your set. And then after your set, Skinny Lester was up. They rocked the place. And you were behind me having a beer. And I was like, hey, man, I'm a big fan of yours from Los Angeles, United States. And yeah.
Oh, good times. Yeah, that was you're right. This is now agency. We're putting on an event as part of Manchester Folk Festival. So, and we're all, I've done a lot of work with Skinny Lister and Will Varley, but we hadn't really all played together for a long time. So it was a bit like a family reunion that night. And the Ritz is, as you say, it's an incredible venue, very special place. So I'm glad I met you there, and that it went on. What a place to propose in Edinburgh, hey?
Yeah,
so that was just after Manchester.
That was right after Manchester. We went to Edinburgh, and we went to the Prince's Street Gardens, and I proposed there, like right in the park where like you overlook the city and stuff. And so let's get to you. We'll start off basic. What led you to this job? What led you to this life and being Beans on Toast?
The whole thing happened quite naturally, really, without sort of too much thinking about it. If I take it all the way back to the start, I started a band when I was in school with a couple of mates, and none of us could play any instruments or knew anything about making music, but we just came up with the name of the band. That was like the starting point. It's like, let's get a name and let's graffiti it all around the school and tell everyone we're in a band. And that was ultimately how it started. You know, everybody believed us and was like, "Oh, cool! Like, what do you play?" And we sort of went from there. So we then divvied out roles, and I was always like, "I'm gonna sing and play guitar," mainly because I just wanted to be on the mic. And we played. I mean, we sort of started the band, and let's say this: we had 5, maybe 6 songs, and we played 2 gigs before anybody explained to us, or before we worked out for ourselves that the guitar and the bass have to play in tune with each other. I'd come up with something on guitar, the bass player would come up with a bass line, and the drummer would just sort of drum, and we'd all just go, "Ah!" And we're just like having a great time. And there was no one that was like, "What are you doing?" Or, "Oh, why don't you try this?" The time that we actually, I remember the first song that we played in the same notes, and I thought we'd like invented music or something, because we'd been making such a racket for so long. It was just like we played this. It was like, this is it, we've done it. And it was like, no, we'd actually just begun, really. But it sort of went on from there. You know, like that with that band. You know, we played in that band through college and had a lot of fun, and sort of like learned a little bit about, I guess, sort of live music and gigging and that. Mainly had fun. And then since that band sort of fell apart, I carried on writing songs. And many years later, we actually moved to, me and the drummer moved to London, and that's sort of like how the band fell apart. And we took the energy of our band and became like club promoters. And I used to put on other people's gigs, basically, in the early 2000s in London. Great time for live music. So I got really into that, and I was like, I was flyering effectively and then putting on shows. And then we moved into a music venue and started running that. And it was there in the music venue, place on Holloway Road called Nambucca, that I'd always been writing songs, but I just wrote a bunch of new songs, and I started putting myself on the bill at this pub and I kind of got up on stage at Glastonbury Festival, just a little open mic tent, and played some of these songs. And from that point, it was just like one thing led to another. Every time I did a gig, I got offered another gig. So I just said yes to that and just followed. At the time, I was still working quite hard, putting on other shows. So I didn't Beans on Toast, which I think is integral to the kind of the attitude that I've been managed to kind of sort of create, I guess, is that initially I didn't need any income from it, because I was running this venue. So I had a job that could pay me, that I didn't need to be there. I still didn't have a boss. So I got like, for years, I could play as Beans on Toast. I said yes to everything, no matter how small the fee was. If it was like, do you want to come up to Edinburgh and sleep on my sofa and get paid 30 quid and come back? I'd be like, yeah, fuck it. And I could probably find another band when I was there to justify coming back to, to the venue and stuff like that. So for years, I just had this amazing kind of like, I guess like loophole almost, where I could do what I wanted musically. I had to answer to no one, and said yes to everything. And slowly after a long time of playing everywhere, every festival, every club, just saying yes, and then getting on tours and whatnot, then it just turned into, and then, I put my first album out, and it sort of became a thing.
And you put out an album every year on your birthday.
So the first album was quite late coming. I'd probably been playing for like four, maybe even 5 years. And then I put out that first album, and then a year later, and I put it out on my birthday because it was just the sort of time that it needed to come out. and it was like, well, I can have a birthday party and an album launch. Get my friends in. It was a little bit bums on seats, sort of way of getting people to come to my album launch. And then a year later, there was another album that was just sort of like, I'd written it and recorded it. And it was like, well, why not do it on the same day again? I guess it makes, it's a bit fun. And then once you do it a third time, then it kind of locks in. And so this December will be album 16.
That's amazing.
So that's
man.
just sort of, yeah, and it's been like, I mean, like now, it for a while it was like, I feel like it can be seen as quite gimmicky, but it's like, it's actually like, it's definitely my natural output. If I didn't have an album or anything to say, then, I wouldn't put one out. I've never had to force myself to get an album ready, or it's never felt like a deadline or anything like that. But it just feels like every year, yeah, there's an album ready. We'll put it out. And now it means that there's actually some, as much as I didn't plan it, there's some pretty good business sense behind it, where it's like I can plan my years like for as long as you like, really. I know when to be in the studio. I know when to tour. I know when I'll be doing kind of festivals and whatnot. And that all fits into my whole life is actually like is filled with these annual events. It's not just like releasing the album every year. There's a lot of festivals that I play every year and have done for 10, 15 years. And not many bands get invited back to the same festivals year in, year out. But again, I've somehow created a loophole or an anomaly, and that's got a lot to do with constantly having new music out, I think, as well, where it's like, at least if these festivals are booking me, they know I'm going to have something else to say come next year, which I invariably do.
Yeah. Well, I think as of the recording of this, you were just at, was it Rebellion that you were just at?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this weekend just gone, I did 5 festivals. I did what could be considered a posh festival called Wilderness. And then I did 2 folk festivals in Essex, which is where I'm from. And then a punk festival in Blackpool, which is the complete other side of the country. And all of them, essentially, I put on a very similar show. I played the same songs at each one, but all the festivals were very different. So it was like, I don't know whether that makes me a posh folk punk, or I certainly was this weekend. But they all went down well, and they're like more and more. I mean, I'm doing around 30 festivals this year, and more I see. The more festivals I do, the more I like them, and I really feel like now they're really important, actually, to the future of humanity. Like for all the shit that's coming down the pipe, be it AI or fucking climate change or anything like that. The only answers to all these things is kind of community. And like you see real community at music festivals, like these old punks in Blackpool, it was, people may view punk rock as one thing, but I'll tell you what, it's fucking well organized. If I could let the people that run Rebellion Festival run this country, I would let them in an instant. It was like, so, like everything was thought about. Everyone was relaxed. I was putting on 300 bands, and I was playing on Sunday night. And these guys looked like they hadn't lifted a finger all weekend. It was that well organized, and it was just like, so there's a lot of, and I think that's going to become more and more important as the world changes as to whatever is coming next, community.
Yeah. No, that's it. That's an excellent point. And yeah, I saw some of the pictures from Rebellion Festival, actually from another singer-songwriter from the UK I'm a fan of, Jess Silk, and she had some pictures from your set. And
yeah, we was playing back to back. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it looked awesome. I mean, that festival looked amazing. I've never gotten to attend, but it's on my list someday.
Yeah, it's hard to describe it. The Winter Gardens in Blackpool is like a giant kind of old, I don't know, maybe like 50s dance hall or something like that, like really grand dance hall. And there's about 20 of them all sandwiched together, all joined by sort of alleyways and food and whatnot. And I don't know how many events can fill the whole thing, or where they find all the punks to fill this one. But it's special. It's really special.
So you said that, or in one of your songs, you want to live your life like Willie Nelson, which is excellent choice. If you had to live your life like 2 other people as well, they can be musicians, right? Whatever you want, but 2 other people in addition to Willie Nelson, who would you pick?
Probably my old man, my dad. He's sort of the happiest old person that I know. So I'd sort of, will follow in his footsteps when it comes to mental clarity, shall we say. So, and what other person could I live my life like? I mean, it might seem like a dead end because they died younger than I am. But Jim Morrison, like the teenager in me always aspired, to be as wild as that. So across the board there.
Yeah.
But I'd choose Willie out of, I'd also choose Willie out if it was like, he'd still be number one.
Nice. Yeah, I think we all had our Morrison phase. I went through like a huge Jim Morrison phase. Like those first couple years of college, it was like just Jim Morrison all the time. And then the first time I went to Venice, it was like, oh man, this is where it all happened.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think if you don't get into it when you're a teenager, it's probably not something you come back to as an adult and like, oh my God, it's blowing my mind. It's like, which is part of the magic of it. I think, it's captured it's timeless, but only for a certain part of people's lives, which, is beautiful.
I think you're right, because I think that's probably why a lot of people, or at least I don't know, maybe you've encountered this or maybe not, but I feel like
fucking hate them. Yeah.
Right, exactly. No one's indifferent to the Doors. They either love them or they hate them. I don't know anyone who's in between.
Like, or like, I like a couple of their tunes or whatever. Yeah, exactly. You're either on board or you're not. And that's chances are whether you listen to them as a teenager or not. I mean, I was like really obsessed. I used to, when I had the Live in LA album, actually. So the Doors Live in LA album, I used to memorize all like the poems and stuff from that. I used to lay in bed, listen to it on my Walkman. And I remember being in school, like mumbling under my breath, with the like reciting one of these poems, and my teacher was like, anything you'd like to share with the class, Jay? And I was like, yeah. Climbed up onto my desk and was like, lions in the street are roaming, dogs in heat, rabbit foaming, and did a whole 5-minute poem in full passion. And then my teacher was just like, thank you very much. And then I sat back down and she carried on reading the register.
That's good. She's like, all right, get this out of your system, and then you got to learn.
Yeah, right. What was she gonna say? Like it was you can't tell a kid off for being that passionate, even if he stood on a desk.
So, since we brought up the Doors, naturally, we're both big beach town people. I know that about you, and that's the case about me too. I know you grew up near the water, right? Like.
No, I'm newly acquired beach town. I moved to I moved to the Kent coast 2.5 years ago. Before that, I was living in the Essex suburbs, and then through my 20s and 30s in London.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I wanted to ask, what is an underrated beach town in the UK that I might not be hip to?
Well, I mean, like Margate is, I live sort of pretty close to Margate, which is seen as that there's a huge kind of London exodus out to Margate at the moment, which makes it's making for a very interesting and sort of it's turned it into a real fascinating place, basically, and real lively. That classic people can't afford London, so they go out, and loads of artists go out and sort of create something which is pretty cool. And there's great venues and stuff there. So Margate, I mean, if you really wanted some there's also Blackpool where I was this weekend. I've got that's where Rebellion is, and that's like a classic English seaside town. I mean, English seaside towns, you could do a podcast just on them, really. A lot of them were like really deprived as soon as like there was cheap holidays to Spain, everybody in England that used to go on holiday to the coast fucked off to Europe, and these seaside towns became deprived, basically, and were really, really run down. And there's a rundown town, and then there's a rundown town that has like fun slogans everywhere and sort of broken and sort of decrepit roller coasters and stuff like that, which sort of adds to the sort of bitter tale of it all. But then more recently, as the country's changed and London is getting more expensive, people are sort of are moving out. Hopefully not at the expense of the people that are already living there, but some places they're finding nice ways of sort of regenerating the seaside towns. For one, think
Yeah.
it's a good thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, London. I love London very much, and when I spent time there, especially as a stand-up, I kind of thought I need to live here. Then I realized, wow, this place is more expensive than LA. This place is like, I mean, it's so
Right.
expensive out there.
I mean, that does from because I moved to London when I was 19, and it's all that I really knew, and it does make you quite thick-skinned, because you can go
Hmm.
anywhere else and the drinks are cheap, so it's
Right.
like, oh, well, all right, as soon as you leave, drinks are on me,
Yeah.
so that was
Yeah.
all I was used to, yeah.
So, you've always been very socially outspoken in your music, but Against the War is like one of the heavier hitting songs in your catalog. I think as far as like, you really go for the jugular. It's one of my personal favorites. What made you kind of put that out when you did?
Just felt like, I think sometimes when something's that much on your mind, and in sort of, it felt rude to not write a song about it. Like, almost like, it doesn't have to be very often, but sometimes when I was sitting down, it's like, I'm going to write another song about sort of, how cool I think my girlfriend is or whatever. And then it's just like, I don't know, I felt the whole tension of the beginning of the war really, really pressing, basically. And I find songwriting is generally I do it so that I can work out how I feel about stuff, and I'll always have a clearer understanding about how I feel about big topics after I've taken the time to write a song about it. So it was just, yeah, I guess I was always gonna. I mean, I've been writing songs about various wars since I've been doing this, really. So it was a kind of like, a few people brought it up, and I was like, well, you can't be surprised I'm commenting on this war, like especially from the angle of asking about peace, which has always been my standpoint. So I certainly haven't changed in that matter.
Well, I first heard about fracking in Sherwood from your music.
Right. Okay.
Like
Yeah.
like that was my first, which I kind of feel like a little bit of like a stereotypical American, because that was my first time hearing about fracking in Sherwood. And also, what did I know about Sherwood prior? Robin Hood. So
Yeah, but
I'll openly admit.
that's enough, isn't it? That's enough. That's enough to know. It's like, do you think it's right that they're going to frack underneath Robin Hood's tree? If anything, Robin can still be the savior of the people. And as far as I know, there's well, I do know that Sherwood is currently safe from fracking, and I'm not taking any responsibility for that with the song, but like, it's safe. It's safe.
Well, so how so? What happened? Like what's kind of the cliff notes on how that?
Oh man, I mean, you would literally have to ask someone else. I mean, it was like, through protest, fracking was stopped completely in the UK for a spell, and more recently, some contracts have been given out. I mean, you can't trust anything this government does or says at the moment. You really never have been able to, but certainly around stuff like that, it's like, you can't hold them to account, because they lie constantly. So who knows? But like, I feel like when things become really real, like, I certainly know that Frack Free Nottingham, if things started kicking off again, the local community, the local sort of anti-fracking campaigners around there would certainly have got in touch to say either we're fucked or can you sing your song again or something like that.
Oh, did they reach out to you? Did you do some stuff like with them?
Yeah, they came along to a bunch of gigs and, set up the stand, and we tried to get, I mean, I can write the song, but it's nicer to have, again, if someone says, so tell me what the laws are of fracking in the country, it's good to be like, why don't you talk to my friends here at Frack Free Nottingham, that can actually that sort of done a different type of research rather than just looking for rhyming words and a sort of overall feel, someone that can't really hold numbers and stuff in my head. So yeah, I'll always try to, and same with the Against the War song, I kind of, as much as it's kind of, there's not much money in releasing the song, I tried to generate a bit of money through Against the War t-shirts and stuff like that, and donated that to CND, Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, as well. I think that's, if you're going to put out songs like that, you need to at least, it just seems like common decency to at least attach yourself to the real campaigners around the matter, rather than just sort of writing a song and distancing yourself from it.
That's awesome. And one of the things I really appreciate about you a lot is that you write songs that are socially relevant, that are also hilarious much of the time, and just brilliantly written compositions. And, you don't sugarcoat anything, but yet you kind of still have a message of let's keep fighting because this world's worth fighting for. So where do you kind of get your hope from?
I'm really optimistic. I mean, like, sort of moaning about it or crying about it isn't going to help anything. Like, I really feel that, like, I understand that it's, can feel quite pressured, the modern world, but I certainly feel like, and the truth is, the day to day of my life is a really pleasant thing. I enjoy my day to day life. There's no getting away from that. I look forward to tomorrow, I look forward to next weekend and whatnot. And it's just like, but there's my life, and then there's a sort of reality of sort of, the world at large and the future. And it's like, so I comment on that from a position of enjoying today, but also because, I mean, I try not to be too kind of glib about it as well, because it's like, you want to be positive, I don't know, but positive and sort of realistic, I suppose. It's like a dancing the line between those. But yeah, I mean, I think it'd be bad to be like, like everything's so bad, and then like, and then go for a walk down through my local park where I just smile at my neighbours and wave, and everyone's sort of, happy and healthy and stuff like that as well. So I think there's a case of appreciating what we have, as well as sort of like trying to get in some sort of prepared state for the future.
Do you think we're doomed?
No. I mean, not to quote my own song, but, like things have always been crazy. And I do think that, like bad news does travel fast. And, and we have been, the computers are confusing us, like they're stripping something away from us. And yeah, I think, like things are going to change, but it doesn't have to be, the end of days.
What makes us human?
That's another quote from myself. The awe and wonder of it all. Quote myself. The fact that we're so small. The fact that we want it all. Yeah, those. I'll stick to those as the answer.
So, we'll get into love now, because your song "Home Is When You Hold Me" has been played at a bunch of people's weddings. I'm pretty sure it was played at mine, because well, the reason I can't say with 100% certainty is because we had two different playlists. One was the playlist for the dance floor, and then one was the playlist of songs that were like songs that we loved that aren't necessarily dance floor songs, but songs that were like meant for the cocktail hour. And
Sure.
and that song of yours was definitely on that list. But,
Right.
Because I was socializing with so many people, I can't say with 100% certainty what was played and what wasn't.
Let's just say it was for,
It was, we'll go with it was. But that's such a beautiful song, and I can really relate to it firsthand too, as a touring performer myself. So what's the key to maintaining a good relationship, especially when you're on the road a lot?
Trust. I mean, if it comes to being away, I think, but ultimately, I mean, like, as cheesy as it is, it's just love. I think love should breed trust anyway. That comes as part of the package. I think like relationships are so beautiful because they're sort of easy and hard, and you've got to work to make them easy. But yeah, you're right. I mean, that song, it's lovely that it gets played at a bunch of people's weddings, and people sort of, send me videos of them it being their first dance and stuff like that. I quite often write out the lyrics and stuff like that to get, because I'm a big fan of weddings, actually, as much as I generally quite sort of anti-establishment in my viewpoint. I've got a big fan of tradition generally, and again, not religious tradition, but just the idea of weddings and committing yourself to another person and stuff like that is something that I had a proposal at a festival I played a couple of weeks ago, and this guy messaged me and was like, I really want to propose during that song. And I was like, yeah, and he was like, I don't know how to do it. And I was like, well, look, leave it with me. I'll give you the mic. We'll do it. And then I was on one, so I gave a bit of a speech about weddings to them after they'd sort of proposed, and said why I sort of why I believe in them and think they're great, and sort of wishing them all the best. And so yeah, I think so what keeps it good? Yeah, trust, commitment, all the obvious things, passion, all like I actually think touring, because now I'm a father of a 5-year-old, and I think it's often presumed that being a touring musician is bad for family life, or hard for relationships, but I've never really seen it that way. I actually think leaving and coming back is can actually put quite a lot of passion into relationships. It certainly stops sometimes being away from someone. It makes you really look forward to seeing each other again as well. And I mean, that was probably easier with my wife, sort of leaving for long tours, than it was my daughter, because we kind of agreed on it rather than me just sort of saying to my daughter, I'm off. But even like if I go away for like 2 weeks on tour now, when I come back, I got at least 2 or 3 days with my daughter where like I can't put a foot wrong. She's like, oh yeah, and it goes back into her telling me off again and whatnot. But for a little bit, so I think the kind of the sort of coming and going aspect, as long as that you spend enough time at home to sort of add up those hours, I think that being away for chunks and home for chunks, I think it's commonly seen as sort of like bad for relationships and or bad for family life, but I've seen the opposite.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't have any kids, but a lot of my friends who do and stuff like that, they always say, it's one of those things, you're going to be gone for part of the time, but when you're home, you're home. You're totally home. Like when you're home, mm-hmm. It's like you don't miss a game or an event or anything. You're like there.
Yeah. Take him to school, pick him up, do swimming class, the whole works. Exactly. Yeah. You can commit to, like, I mean, me and my wife, obviously sort of split it up, but like, I'm definitely, I'm involved in her school like a fair lot more than most of the dads, if I'm honest, and just because of, and that's me not knocking how they work. It's just because my work actually leans that I can do it. I can help out and can be there, just work it into the diary.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So, you're coming over to my neck of the woods kind of soon, which I'm very much looking forward to. We're going to be talking more about it here in a second. Yeah. So, your song, "The Great American Novel," which is again one of my favorite Beans on Toast tunes. A dollar costs more than it's worth. Could you elaborate on that? I love that line.
Yeah, I feel it's just like obviously the whole song is like it was about how much I love America, and I got everything I wanted to get out in the song, but I was just like, I can't do it without any criticism of of America as a whole at all. So it was just like one criticism, one line at the end. A dollar costs more than it's worth. I guess it's like it's my bash on capitalism, basically. And that's probably the part of America that I like the least, even though that's probably the biggest engine in what America is. That's not. When I go, I'm there for the people and the music and the sort of traveling and whatnot. So I think it was just that. It was a kind of line that just fell on my lap, and it was like, boom! It's a great exit out of the song, because the song is a bit ass kissy. It's like everything. I love it so much. I love it so much. It was good just to leave on a bang, and it's just like there's obviously some things we could work on, sort of thing.
Yeah. No, I actually appreciate the verse the most, where you're like, well, and I also saw the foreign policy and the police brutality,
Right?
and it's like, so it's
Yes.
like, yeah, I do see, I mean, there
Yeah.
are a lot of,
Actually, I forgot about that verse. Then, yeah, of course, that sort of the last verse comes through, and then there is that last line just as a kind of as a sort of sign off.
yeah, no, I appreciate that part the most, because especially as an American, because it's like, obviously I share all those frustrations when you're saying things like, oh, you can't trust anything this government says. I'm like, that sounds familiar. And
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, I mean, like, we got but sometimes you do have to take a moment to realize, but there's so many amazing pockets in this country, especially when you travel around, and that is a thing of beauty, but there's also these very glaring problems that aren't just gross in the United States, but we're causing problems all around the world. I mean, we're the world's bully in many ways, and, and sometimes you guys
Right, I see what you mean.
follow our lead. Which
yeah, of course we do. Yeah.
But
yeah, the old relationship. Yeah, yeah, I don't know what else to add to that, really. I mean, it's like it is the when you travel around, it is I really feel like, obviously I'm very sort of lucky to be able to do the amount of traveling that I do, but traveling, it really is good for your soul, and you really do see like the side of America, and the how hospitable people are, and how cool it is, and sort of how sort of well educated and well read everybody is, and stuff like that. The more you travel, you kind of see into that side of thing. And I mean, I also, I grew up with American culture. Like literally, from my favorite authors, Tom Robbins is my favorite writer. All his, most of the music, to this day, I'm kind of sort of like more than half of the kind of music, films, and books that I consume are by Americans. So I love the culture as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, based on your music and stuff, I think you and I are into a lot of similar things. And, for me, it's like, I'm the same way with American culture, and I grew up here. And then there's also a lot of British stuff. So for me, it was like seeing London for the first time, seeing Manchester for the first time. I kind of had that the other way, where I'm like, oh, this is the BBC Six Walk, and this is, like the Happy Mondays and the Smiths, and going to Affleck's was like, that was like a toy store for adults. Like, it was amazing to me, just going through those buildings.
I mean, which sort of, to me, that says, one, how important sort of culture and travel combined are, aren't they? It's just sort of like, that makes for quite a fulfilling life if you get to, really indulge yourself and love a type of music, and then go to the place where it's from. It feels like I'd love to be able to know that everybody had opportunities like that. I think it'd make for more people would see the positives, and it'd make for a more peaceful world. The sun's going down on me here. I might turn this little light on. How's that?
All right. Yeah. Thanks. That's awesome. Yeah. It's evening where you're at. It's it's afternoon here. So
good times.
Yeah. So let's get to, as we're wrapping up here, for someone who's not familiar with your music, what would be the first song you would tell them to start with?
I mean, I'd just sort of MD Amazing, it was always at the top of Spotify. It's not necessarily my favorite, but actually, Watching the World Go By, the algorithms have somehow picked that one up and put it on the top recently, and I was probably quite happy. I didn't think MDMA would ever leave the top of my Spotify, and it's sort of been knocked off. Watching the World Go By, I guess that's a good starting point.
Are you happy?
Yeah, man, definitely.
Nice. What does that mean? Like elaborate on that.
Elaborate on happiness. I mean, yes. I'm having a great time.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, literally, I've had a brilliant week. Yeah, I'm very grateful for my house and my little studio that I'm sat in now, and my beautiful daughter who's asleep in bed, I think, or up playing with her unicorns and dragons. Like I, I'm grateful for the weekend that I've just had and the one I'm about to have, traveling and playing songs to people, and yeah, and even the simpler things, the kind of trees and swimming in the sea, which I did, which I plan to do and stuff like that. Like I've kind of always been that way. I mean, I feel like I could probably still be working in the factory that I was at a teenager, and I'd still find something to, like I'd still find something to be happy about.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, my old man's a pretty happy fellow. Which is a very powerful thing.
Oh, no, that's awesome. That's beautiful, man. Because yeah, I mean, I do. It's one of those things when I'm having a tough day, you're one of those artists that I can turn to, and I feel a little bit better after.
Great. Well, that's good to know. If I can cheer anyone up, then that's definitely a win. Maybe that's why I feel happy, because there's other people happy that I don't know about in LA.
There you go.
Let's talk about these gigs that I'm. Let's talk about these gigs that I'm doing. Do you know the venue? So I'm playing in LA. Let me get the dates right. I'm playing in LA on the 26th of September at the Morrison Lounge.
The Morrison Lounge. I've not been there, but I have heard of it. Yeah, I think it's in. Is it downtown? I'm not sure what neighborhood it's in, but of course I'll check, and I got to grab my tickets. And then I thought I saw you were doing a second event in the area as well. Is that still happening?
Well, I'm doing Frank Turner's Lost Evenings Festival in Anaheim.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay.
At House of Blues. Yeah, at House of Blues. And here's a story about that. So a long time ago, I was supporting Frank Turner on tour. And he had a gig at House of Blues in Anaheim. It was me, Skinny Lister, and Frank Turner. And and about halfway through the tour, I got a message from the kind of powers that be at Frank's team. And they just said, you're not allowed to play the Anaheim show. It's on Disney property, and Disney can veto acts. And they've listened to your music and vetoed you. And I was like, what the fuck? And it was, you're first on, so you don't really get a chance to kick off. I was like, what the fuck? They got in another band. And I was like, yeah, well, fuck Disney, and everyone was like, yeah, we're all going to Disneyland. And I had this sort of like miserable day of because I was like, well, if they don't want to let me play, I won't go. And it just, they got in another band, and that was that. And then I picked up the tour the next day. And then, so Frank's Lost Evenings Festival, it moves around. He's done one in Boston, he's done a few in London, and last year he did it in Berlin. And he said to me then, he was like, I'm going to do the next one in LA. It's going to be in Anaheim. And I was like, no, you're not doing it in the venue that wouldn't let me play, man. That's evil. And he said, no, they've actually moved the House of Blues brick by brick off of Disney property because they kept on vetoing bands. So I was like, well, I have to play. Now we can say they moved it just for me. And he was like, okay, yeah, you got the gig. So
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. I looked it up at the time. When I was vetoed, like I could only find a couple of like hardcore metal bands that they hadn't let play, and me. But I guess they just kept on doing it. And then House of Blues have moved. But obviously we're going to claim that they've moved it just for me so that I could play Lost Evenings. But and that festival is kind of, like the way that I can make things work in the States is if I can get a festival, I play the festival, and then I'll get a bunch of shows surrounding it. So I'm doing the festival on the 23rd of September, and then LA on the 26th, San Francisco on the 27th, Portland on the 28th, and Seattle on the 29th. And then I'm back in November, similar thing where I'm doing the Flogging Molly Salty Dog Cruise, which is a festival of, a cruise from Miami, which I've done. This will be my 6th time. Again, I kind of snuck onto that the first year. Nate, the bass player of Flogging Molly, I was like, come on, get me on. And then I incorporated myself and turned into a bit of a mascot for the cruise, and they've been going. And then around then, I'm doing Boston, New York, Cincinnati, Atlanta, Orlando, and then the cruise, and that's all in November. So if anybody's listening, we've got to shift the tickets basically. So if you're listening, tell your friends, get your tickets, and I'll see you in one of those beautiful cities.
Yeah. Please plug also like just plug your website, your social medias, and anywhere people can go to get tickets and learn more about you.
Yeah, just Google Beans on Toast. I think it'll come. It took me a while to fight, amongst the kind of cookery shows and whatnot here in the UK. But I think I think you'll probably, if you Google it in America, it'll probably be like, watching Americans eat beans on toast, for like a bunch of YouTube videos. And then underneath that, there'll be my website.
Perfect. Well, Beans, thanks so much for doing this, man. I'll definitely be at the LA headlining show, and I'm going to try to catch the festival in Anaheim too. And I'll also tell you this, there's a lot of picketing right now in LA because of the strikes, the writer strikes and the actor strikes. And I am on the picket line occasionally, and if I go to the one at Disney, I'm making a sign for you. So now that I know about this,
send me a picture. Yeah,
I will, man.
Exactly.
You got it.
Good man. Well, I look forward to meeting you in LA. Good times.
Hey guys, Ron Placone here. Take your own 1,000 challenge. No, you don't need to interview 1,000 people, although if you want to do that, go for it. Your 1,000 challenge can be whatever you want. Maybe you want to call a friend out of the blue once a week. Maybe you want to read a book every month. Maybe you want to start a different garden every season. I guess that might be dependent on where you live. Look, the point of the challenge is taking on an endeavor that enriches your life in some way, and it can be measured. And then, of course, you do it regularly. That's what 1,000 is doing for me, and hopefully for you too. The main reason for this podcast and every podcast I've ever done is to build community. So take your own challenge. Then join our Facebook group. It's called 1,000 What's Your Challenge? ? That's 1,000 What's Your Challenge ? And post about what your 1,000 challenge is and the progress you're making. All I ask is that people be encouraging of each other's challenges. This is personal and vulnerable, so be cool. There's enough negativity on social media. We don't need to add to it. For those of you who aren't on Facebook, hopefully in the future we'll be expanding to places like Discord, Reddit, but for now, we're starting on Facebook. And again, that Facebook group is called 1,000 What's Your Challenge? See you there.